Hey, welcome to my first record. My name is David Britto. I'm a music journalist based in Bombay, and on my first record, I talk to artists about their first releases, whether it's an EP or an album. And today I'm joined by Bombay-based vocalist, harpist Nush Lewis, who released her debut EP, Fused, in 2015. So, hey Nush, how are you? And thanks for joining me.
Hey Dave, thanks for having me. This is a super fun series you're doing right now.
So when Fuse came out, I remember you saying that it's one of the rantiest things that you did because the songs were so emotion heavy. So what more can you tell me about that?
I think they were the rantiest songs because they were the first couple of songs that I wrote on the harp, and I think that always happens with like the first set of songs that you ever write on your own. Maybe, I don't know, this was like just me. But yeah, it was a culmination of a lot of experiences that came together, such as I had just moved to Bombay. About a month into moving to Bombay, I received my harp, and so it was like no job, did not know anybody from anywhere. So I had a lot of time to kind of sit with my feelings, and I think that's what came out of Fused, which is very interesting because now when I look back, I kind of giggle at a lot of the stuff that I've written, but at the same time, I mean, of course, not to trivialize my feelings at that point. It's nice to know that you have grown out of like a phase, or phases only last for a certain amount of time, and you know they're bad phases or whatever, or they're emotional phases, but it passes. And that's pretty much what Fused was about my life back then when I was, 22, 23. So, yeah. But that was when it was written. It came out much later. So, yeah.
Bright orange teacups.
So the record opens with Bright Orange Teacups, which has an ethereal sound going for it. What do you remember about that song and putting it together?
Bright Orange Teacups was technically the third song I'd ever written for the harp. It was written about a daydream, and the reason why I think I even named it what it was, or I wrote about a daydream, was because I wanted to write one piece that was a little more positive, or had like just a more brighter tone than everything else on the EP, even though lyrically Teacups ends on a bit of a sad note, and it does go into this slightly lonely space, but it was written purely out of like, let's write something that is not dark or moody, and that's why it's got that little playful melody line also that's written on the harp, which is basically like a small arpeggio, but it is kind of playful, and it tries to be light-hearted, and I think that's what daydreams are. Even I think production-wise, what we did with it was very. I mean, we tried to play with those feelings of wanting to keep it like light-hearted, and I think on the record towards the end, we just kind of very abruptly end the song on we just kind of slow everything down, and it just goes there because we want also that feeling of like slight abandonment, which anyways it is where it ends. So, Ayan and I just took a call, and we were like, let's just end it that way. So, yeah.
Moving doors pass me by.
The second song on the EP is Moving Doors, which has an electronic touch. And what do you remember from the sonic approach for this song?
When I think in general, when I was putting Fuse together, and when I was sitting with Ayan and doing it, a lot of it, I mean, at that point, like I said, I did not have too much of direction on a lot of pieces, just because I was learning things. So I wasn't really sure in terms of arrangements what I wanted to do and stuff like that. I was basically, I mean, just kind of what Ayan would do. He would almost play a game and keep throwing ideas at me and be like, what if we do this? What if we do that? And I've always been someone who's liked electronic music. So kind of knowing that I could add that element without having to take away from the harp and the writing being very typically singer-songwriter style. And that I knew that I could bring that element in of like having to color it with just like slightly darker synths or darker string lines and string sections. That was pretty much a choice that we made together. So yeah, Moving Doors was also one of those pieces that was written at a time when I don't think I had a job at that time. I just moved, and so I like playing with those kind of colors, and it just fit. It was a production decision that Ayan made and that I agreed with. So yeah.
Funny, Ferris wheel.
The next song is Funny Ferris Wheel, where the harp comes to life on the record. Was that a conscious decision to put that, to bring the harp forward in that sense for this song particularly?
Oh, very much so. Funny Ferris Wheel was, I remember even having that conversation where we were like, we need that one song where we give the audience what they want, which is the harp. We knew a lot of people would be listening for that. Also, I think it was the right song to do it for, because it was a very, it is slightly whimsical. It is very surreal in its visualization. So we could do that, and we could play with just having just the harp and the vocals and nothing else. I think even production wise, we just added like a little reverb to the harp to open it up, and that's it. But it's very interesting because that's the one song from the EP that has evolved, even in terms of arrangement when we take it live. And in fact, now it's become one of my favorite songs to play live.
Break away from this tragedy, the insanity is eating into me.
The next song on the record is Finding Sanity, which comes across as quite a heavy song lyrically. What was that song born out of?
That song was born out of a nervous breakdown / panic attack / something. I don't know what was going on that day, but I remember that day very, very well. It was in Ayan's studio. He was sitting with another client outside. I was inside the room, and I used to at that point go to his house almost every day because I had left my harp there, because it was a pain to travel up and down with my harp. So I'd left my harp there. And I don't know, I think that day I was just feeling a lot of rejection and just like the song says, just felt like I was in pieces almost. And I remember I quickly wrote it, and it felt good that I wrote it, but I was still feeling very anxious, and I think it was like a proper like anxiety attack. And I didn't want to trouble Ayan, so I remember just going out, poking my head out into the main room where he was working with someone, and I just said, I have to leave. And he came to me and he said, is everything okay? And I said, no, it's not, but I mean, I'm just going to go, I'll come back tomorrow. And he said, okay, cool. And I remember the next day I went back, and he asked me about it, and I said, whatever. I said, I was just, it was a bad attack. And I said, but I did write something, and I ran out of the door because I needed to get out. I needed to get air. And he said, okay, do you want to play what you wrote for me? And I said, yeah, I actually do. And I remember taking my harp from that room into the kitchen, and I sat in his kitchen and I played the whole thing through, and he literally just was like, this is exactly why you do what you do. And he's like, this is exactly how you should write. And I think that was the first time I saw someone kind of have confidence in my skill, and which is a very reassuring thing when you're a new artist on the scene, of course, and you do, it is only natural to look for like validation. So when Ayan was just like, he's like, I love this, let's put this down, this is going on to the EP, we did it. And that's pretty much like how Finding Sanity came out. And it still is one of those songs that even when played live, it is something that visually for me it takes a lot to get through that song. I'm used to it now, but yeah, it was a hard one to write for sure.
Dim lights above me.
So the thing is, with Dim Lights, the live version as opposed to what's on the record is very different. When we put this on the record, we kind of tried to eliminate the harp almost, and you do hear it. It's way back in the mix though. And what I do live is a very traditional harp arpeggio, which any beginner harpist would learn is like playing like a first inversion chord, and the entire song was actually written on like a first inversion chord that just goes on and on and on and on and till it resolves almost. But it was interesting because when we went in that direction on the EP, I think it was fun because it's almost like in a 4, I think, on the EP. I'm not even sure. It's been I rarely listen to my own. I rarely listen to Fused. But if I do listen to Fused, I listen to Dim Lights first because it, like you said, it is a crowd pleaser. It is one of my favorite songs on that EP. The string lines that Ayan wrote for that and produced for that have to be one of my favorite. And yeah, but I think it's a crowd pleaser because it does have the harp playing in its traditional sense, and I think it was also one of the few pieces that I like wrote a bridge for, because I'm not known for writing bridges for a lot of my songs. So yeah, and it has a nice build up. It's very traditional in that sense. Yeah.
The EP then closes with Frozen Eyes, which is quite cinematic. And what do you remember from putting that song together, both sonically and lyrically as well?
Frozen Eyes was a complete inspiration from, was inspired by Florence and the Machine's track called Seven Devils, which, if you listen to it, is mildly disturbing. It's very hypnotic. It's got these beautiful bells, and but it is one of those very, very dark pieces. And there was something about that song that I loved. And I used to be obsessed with Florence and the Machine. I think I still am, just because I like the way she writes, and I like her use of this really large sound, which is kind of where Frozen Eyes came from. It was also a time where I think I was just going through a tough time with a couple of losses in my life and that sort of thing. So Frozen Eyes came into this almost like where you feel like it's a very, at least when I wrote it, it was one of those very numbing songs where you just don't want to feel anything. You just want to be kind of without any feeling, almost like in a drug-induced coma, so to speak. But I wanted to use how like Florence uses this one, like these chimes in the beginning and these bells, the same way I wanted to use I use the harp the same way when it opens with those arpeggios, and I think even with the chord progressions, we kept it in that space where there's a lot of tension, and yeah, and I think it's one of those pieces where it's one of the few pieces where I have direction for my drummer, whether I'm playing it live. But I even remember, like, when I did this with Ayan, I wanted there to be like these heavy floor toms to be playing, and I wanted like just like heavier bass lines, a lot of that low end, even on the harp, and we translate that live as well. And that's the only song that I'm very particular about live when we do.
So it's been 5 years since Fused came out. Looking back on the project and the process of making it, what do you think about it, and what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, to be very honest, I would love to go back and rework all those pieces. And that's not to say I don't love what we did with it. Of course I do. But like now, and I think that's a very normal thing, is when you listen to something that you wrote back, then you're just like, oh, I would change this now, or I would like, flip that or flip this. And I actually even spoke to Ayan about it, and I was like, dude, we should, like, I want to re-record these things. Maybe we'll put it out as singles, call it Refused or something like that, and just have, like a new take on it. And yeah, but I would love to, like, as much as I loved what I did with that, I would love to, in fact, rework, re-record, rearrange some of those pieces to be different for sure.
Do you have any new music coming out that you can talk to me about?
Yes, I do. I have a third EP that's been in the works for about. I wrote it, I think, all throughout last year. Ever since I finished my work, I wouldn't say Bridges was out by then, but I just finished my work with Bridges, and we had finished with the final masters, and I'd already started writing new stuff. So that is a culmination of what is on the third EP, which is titled Forgotten Verses. It was to be out, in fact, by now, but unfortunately, because of the situation where we had not been able to work on it, and even just my access to the band was not there, and I'm one of those people who likes to physically have people in the room when we're working on stuff. And I think it's the same with the voice. We haven't really kind of worked on it. We've put down scratch tracks, or rather I've put down scratch tracks, and it's there. It is another concept album that will come out. We're trying to work with like the deaf community and with dancers and that sort of thing. But again, that is something that we will be able to execute only once the situation is done. So yeah, hopefully, if not this year, then next year, this EP will be out. I mean, if we can put out the music for it, nothing like it. But it will take for the whole the whole concept to come together physically. I'm seeing that. I mean, I don't even want to predict the future with that one. So yeah.
Thanks, Nush, for taking the time to talk to me, and I'm looking forward to the new releases.
Thanks, Dave. It was super fun. Thank you.